President-elect Biden has chosen to nominate Boston Mayor Marty Walsh to serve as his labor secretary. And it's interesting to note that when Governor Charlie Baker was speaking just a short time ago, he was asked about this. It's well known that Governor Baker and Mayor Walsh have a very close, collegial, bipartisan relationship. And the governor mentioned that he has not discussed this at all with Mayor Walsh. He had no indication that this was coming and said for everyone in public life, decisions like these are personal. It is up to the individual to make that decision. But the governor went on to say that if Mayor Walsh does take this job, obviously we will wish him well. And during this difficult time, managing the coronavirus crisis, of course, we will transition to work with the president of the Boston City Council, who will be the acting mayor of Boston. That is Kim Janey. And so earlier this week, there had been some speculation that this might be going on. Mayor Walsh was asked about this, and he had said that he was focused on managing the coronavirus crisis in the city of Boston and really would not give any indication either way that this was going on. Let's bring our John Keller back to discuss the implications of all of this. This is a re-election year for the mayor of Boston, John, as you mentioned earlier, and so this throws this already busy year, just a few days into 2021, into a whole new set of circumstances for the people of the city of Boston.
Yeah, first the Speaker of the House leaving, and now the Mayor of Boston. It certainly does shake up things, Paula. And it's going to set up a fascinating race for the Boston mayoralty this year. You've got Kim Janey, the city council president, a district councilor from Roxbury, serving her second term, a former activist at a number of different organizations. Also already running in this race, another district councilor, Andrea Campbell, and Michelle Wu, a citywide councilor. So three women of color. Who knows who else might jump into this thing, but I'll tell you, those of us who've been around a little while in Boston, our thoughts immediately flash back to 1993, when Mayor Ray Flynn was appointed ambassador to the Vatican by President Bill Clinton, touching off at almost the same time of year, a little later on in the re-election year. And that made Tom Menino, the president of the city council, acting mayor, and he wrote the book, along with advisors, his consultant, Ed Jesser, and others, on how to leverage the job of acting mayor into a huge advantage in the mayoral race. Now, I haven't had a chance, this all happened so quickly, to look up how much money Council President Janey has in her campaign fund, but I'll tell you something, the playbook is right there for her to be considered really an early front-runner in this race, simply by virtue of holding the office for the next 10 months, at least up until Election Day, or at least preliminary day in September. So it's going to be interesting to watch. It's also going to be interesting to see what Walsh does as Secretary of Labor. Joe Biden made a lot of promises to organize labor during the campaign. It'll be Marty Walsh's job to see that the administration delivers, Paula.
It's true. And, you bring up an interesting point, John, because when Mayor Kevin White, who is sort of seen as the bridge from the old mid-20th century Boston to the new modern Boston, with the development of Faneuil Hall Plaza and attracting more business to the city of Boston, ultimately then leading to Mayor Flynn, Mayor Menino. As we begin and really enter a new decade of this new century, this indicates really a new era for the city of Boston. If Marty Walsh is confirmed, as you say, and goes on to be labor secretary, what it will mean as this race unfolds for the city. Certainly, this will be a huge transitional period.
Yeah, it will. I mean, certainly the optics of it are dramatically different. Boston has never been led by a woman or a person of color. So it's been a long time coming. We're really one of the last major cities to never have had a mayor of color. But keep in mind, Marty Walsh, to a great extent Tom Menino, and in some ways Ray Flynn we're definitely progressives in a lot of the ways that we understand modern-day municipal progressivism to manifest itself. So it's not like you're going from, an arch-conservative old ward healer to a hip liberal, in some kind of hip liberal transition. However, having said that, yes, it is going to be a dramatic difference, and it's going to be a fascinating race because I don't think those three women are going to wind up being the only candidates looking to win this job. It's a coveted post, and the bigger the field, the fewer votes you have to win to triumph in the end. So get your scorecards ready.
And what about the skills Marty Walsh brings to the Department of Labor?
Well, it's going to be interesting, and my understanding is that the news also came out today almost simultaneously with this Walsh news that President-elect Biden is going to pick Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo to be Commerce Secretary. It's interesting that those two names should leak out at the same time. Because Raimondo, who's seen as a reformer and is obviously very bright and skillful as governor of Rhode Island, has also earned the, shall we say, distaste of public employee unions in Rhode Island for her aggressive pursuit of pension reform and other changes that municipal unions didn't like. Now, Marty Walsh was a president of a trade union. He's from the trade union side of the ledger, and there are many significant differences between the trade unions and the municipal unions in terms of their agenda. But he's going to be the Secretary of Labor, it looks like, pending the confirmation, the final announcement of this, and then the confirmation in the Senate. And he's going to have his work cut out for him. The last 4 years have been tough for organized labor, tough in terms of the way the Trump administration has dealt with them, tough in terms of a number of significant court rulings that have come down. So he will inherit a full agenda, to say the least. And look, the thing about Marty Walsh that I think has impressed anyone as he rose through the ranks in the legislature to become, I would say, a pretty popular two-term mayor of Boston, is that he's a schmoozer. He's not a guy who picks fights, who gets petty with people. If you've had a chance to see part of the incredibly long but very interesting new documentary that's out now by the famous documentary maker Frederick Weissman, it's called City Hall, and it's all about the Walsh administration. If you watch it, or even part of it, you will get an eyeful of the Walsh style, the Walsh empathy, the Walsh attention to detail. Being a cabinet secretary in Washington these days, you come in atop a permanent bureaucracy that has seen secretaries come and go. You come in at a time when there's certainly a harsh divide in Washington on labor issues. So it's going to take every bit of his power of finesse and persuasion to make success out of this job. But, once again, someone from Massachusetts taking over as Secretary of Labor. You'll remember Robert Reich, the former Harvard professor, and I think a professor of one of your daughters out there at Berkeley, right, Paula?
That's right, that's right.
He held that job under Bill Clinton.
I have sat in on one of Robert Reich's classes, and yeah, it is very interesting, John, when you talk about the skills that you need in Washington. I mentioned a little bit earlier before you joined me the well-joked about bromance between Mayor Walsh and Governor Baker and the kind of relationship that they have enjoyed in Massachusetts through a lot of difficult circumstances, certainly this coronavirus crisis being one of them, demonstrating an ability to work across the aisle and to make connections and, as you say, have good relationships with people while running the city of Boston.